Nā mihi o te rā kia koutou, nā rangatira mā, nā kuia mā, ki te hongo ora tātou hui mai nei, tēnā tātou katoa. Can I particularly acknowledge first Ross and Gilbert, who made this happen today. It sort of grew out of a conversation we had at Mahuri Marae and Point Chev some months ago. But Gilbert particularly, I think, did the hard yards to make it happen, and I'm really pleased it has happened. It's important we have this conversation. You've got 4 politicians in front of you, all trying hard not to be politicians and to electioneer. I think genuinely we've got more in common than separates us. I don't think any of us takes pleasure in the fact that we've got a lot of young guys sort of idling away down the road at Ngāwhā there and other prisons around the country as a consequence of drug laws particularly. That's doing nobody any good particularly. I think the consensus we need to find politically is what's the outcome we want to achieve. And if we do just want to keep slamming up more young guys and young girls, let's just keep doing what we're doing, because we're achieving that pretty well now. But I do believe that collectively and individually, that's not the outcome we want. So the political consensus we have to achieve is what is the outcome we want. And I think if we start the conversation at that point, then we're going to make some progress. We need to park a lot of our political differences and really get on with the business of trying to resolve problems. The community has to be involved in that. There's political risk in drug law reform. I guess the Green Party is the party that's been associated with drug law reform issues for a very long time. It hasn't always done us a lot of favours politically, having that position, but I do believe that in order to lower the political risk and to make change possible, the communities have to be engaged, and whenever you put up your hand about reform of law in just about any area, be it drugs or violence or whatever else, there's always a small but often very vocal group in the community who really get racked up, and dare I mention the Sensible Sentencing Trust, who I think have done a lot of harm personally in our communities, because they come out with those simplistic, loud approaches, and often the voice of reason doesn't get heard the same. So in order for political change to happen, it's important that the people in our communities are vocal about whether or not you want change, and if so, what is the change we're looking for collectively. And I do believe is that we've heard it in most beautifully succinct form from Matua Portiki in that speech we heard, that it's a long-term, deeply ingrained problem. I was in Finland recently. I was there looking at prisons, Finland, Norway and the UK, looking at prisons, probation, justice services generally. And Finland's a really interesting case. They used to have one of the highest rates of imprisonment in Europe, and now they've got one of the lowest. And that was like a 40-year project. It doesn't happen quickly. As we've heard, it's taken us 40-odd years to get to this place we are now. I desperately hope it doesn't take us that long to unpick it and get to a better situation where our young people are not tempted to go into drug use and abuse, where alcohol and other drugs are not such a problem in our communities. But it'll take time, it'll take a lot of work, and critically, I think we have to front load the solutions. By that I mean one major political difference we do have with the present government is the notion of spending money on a new prison, for example. I'd like to see the drug treatment facilities, the mental health services, the education services, the housing services. That's where we want to put $1 billion over 5 or 8 years, not into building a prison. I think the need for a new prison will go away if we front load those positive social services. And if we do that I acknowledge, the government has put some of this justice sector money. They've sort of spread that around in a useful way with housing and drug treatment and other things. But that won't enable anybody to build capacity. A one-off, here's $500,000 or here's X number of dollars as a one-off contribution. That won't enable the services to build capacity. It won't encourage the training and education of counsellors, of chippies to build the houses we need, of psychologists and so on. We need long-term commitment to funding to support those services that I believe are the solution. Specifically about drug law reform, the Greens would seek to remove the absolute prohibition on cannabis. We would hardwire drug education into the schools, into the curriculum at schools, to make it really clear to young kids that actually doing drugs might seem attractive, but it's very, very dangerous, most of all for young people. And that's not a moral judgment, that's a physiological one. When the The mental programming is still happening. Drug and alcohol use is extremely dangerous for young people. So to educate them and just understand the level of risk they are engaging in. We would, as I say, remove the prohibition. We would seek to discourage, dissuade the use of drugs and the use and abuse of drugs, acknowledging there are those who will always seek to use drugs. Not all drug use is problematic, though, as I say, we start from a position similar to Foundation, that the best and healthiest lifestyle is a drug-free lifestyle. So I think that's enough for me for now, but I think our political challenge and our task is to find out what we agree about in terms of what the outcome we want, and then have a really sensible conversation based on evidence and input from the community about what's the best way to get there. Kia ora koutou.